Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Midweek Takeaway. We're delighted to be joined by Oliver Friesen, CEO of Guardian Metal Resources. Welcome back, Oliver.
Hey, Phil, Kev, how are you guys doing?
Yeah, absolutely. All good here, thanks. So, obviously, we just saw news that the company has reported exceptional drill results, including one of the longest mineralized intervals recorded at the site. Highlights include 46 meters at 0.413% tungsten trioxide, 12.2 grams per ton of silver, and 2,476 parts per million copper in PM 24017, with standout high-grade intercepts. These results significantly upgrade the resource model within the planned pit shell. Additionally, PM 24004 identified promising porphyry-hosted copper, suggesting potential for further copper enrichment across the project. You emphasized the project's strategic importance, aligning with US efforts to secure domestic tungsten and copper supplies. So, Oliver, just talk us through these latest assay results, please.
Yeah, no, that's a really good overview, Phil. So yeah, what we've done here is we've released the next four holes. So assays are now streaming in. I think, what did we announce? We're on hole 38. So this is up to hole 17 now. So we haven't even reported half the holes yet, Phil. And obviously we're still drilling. So this is super exciting stuff. We've released 3 batches now, so we're keeping the market informed. I want everyone just to be cognizant of that, or as the results come in, we're batching them up and getting them out to you guys so you know what's going on. We've had some fantastic results to date. You mentioned the high grade intercepts from this hole. I think a big takeaway for me was the width. 46 meters is, I think, one of the widest, if not the widest or longest interval of continuous mineralization hit at Pilot Mountain. And that's significant. A lot of, tungsten deposits globally are vein hosted. And it's important to recognize that, because vein hosted deposits, you might get a really high grade, 1, maybe 2% WO3, maybe even higher, but it's over narrow width, half a meter, maybe a meter. 46 meters is what we've hit here. And even within that interval, we have up to 1.9% WO3. So we have some really high grades. We have up to 1.99% WO3 within that 46-meter interval. So, we're working really hard. There's a lot of news to come here up until Christmas. Drilling is ongoing, so it's all systems go. And obviously the macro continues to get really exciting here with export restrictions coming into an effect in less than a week's time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so with the PM 2414 and 17 returning these high grade tungsten, and obviously, the copper results are good as well. I saw some of them up to 5% copper equivalent, which is, is high grade. You can't just talk that down. So how do these findings enhance the overall resource potential of the Pilot Mountain project?
Yeah, so I mean it's really, you got to take all the holes into context to really figure out what this looks like. But what we're doing is we're drilling in areas where there's low drill density. That's the important thing to remember here. And a lot of the historical holes, and what I'll do is I'll try to highlight this more going forward as to what we're doing here, what the kind of the thesis is. But a lot of holes that are drilled historically were vertical. So they're just straight up and down holes. And this is a subvertical mineralized body. So verticals are not an optimal way to drill this. In fact, if you talk to a geologist today, they say that's a horrible idea to drill a vertical hole in a subvertical mineralized body, because you're not
Ev's
getting
always
it.
joked about when we've been on site. He said, "Why don't you just drill directly through the strike into the middle and get you the best results?" And everyone's going, "You're crazy, Kev. You're crazy."
Well, that's called a director's special, Phil. It's a Canadian term that some companies do. But yes, if it's vertical and you drill through the guts of it, you're going to get potentially the longest intercept. But also what can happen is you can miss it, right? Because if you're drilling something that's vertical and it just deviates a little bit one way and you're drilling vertical, you're going to go out of it, right? So what we're doing is we're stepping back to the north and we're drilling across it. So what we're seeing is, for instance, in hole 17, we started to hit mineralization at 66.4 meters, right? And the vertical hole that we're sort of intercepting, if you actually put this into context in the cross section, we're hitting mineralization much higher up and towards the north than just that vertical hole could tell us. So I guess, vertical holes are not commonly used anymore. And this is the reason why, because when you go and drill a horizontal hole, you get a much better picture. And realistically, you can understand really what the scale is here. So the width is fantastic. The copper enrichment we're seeing, you mentioned, up to 5%. That's copper, not copper equivalent. So we're seeing some really interesting copper results. And that also includes silver and zinc. So all four metals matter here. The most important one is tungsten, and ecstatic to be drilling holes like this, and a lot more to come, which is important to remember.
Did you ever play that game Kaplunk, Oliver?
Maybe it did make it to Canada. I don't know that one.
Kaplunk is that game where you have to put the sticks in
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and then you pull all the balls in and then you pull it out. Okay. I'm trying to give
Okay.
people a visual image of what you're
Yeah.
doing in
Okay.
terms of the drilling.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you're going sideways, in Kaplunk you can't put one in straight from the top,
Yeah.
but you can put it in from the side, and then it either supports the balls or it doesn't support the balls. If the balls fall down, then they fall down. So I'm just trying to give people a visual image of how we're drilling and
Yeah.
the size now of this, because I was quite amazed when I read it. 46 meters is a hell of a long
Yeah.
strike. I mean, from the perspective of normal tungsten, as you said, it's in small veins and it's not very long. So
hmm
what does that tell us geologically about the sort of I don't know what the right word is geologically, but the power of the thrust that had to come to bring this metal to the surface?
Yeah, well, so it's a skarn zone, right? So it's not vein hosted. A lot of times, skarns can be kind of narrow and wispy things. In this case, we're seeing size, right? And that's really important. So, it's obviously it's a rich system. It's sizable, from an east-west strike perspective, extends for I think it's over 400 meters now, and obviously down dip as well. And it's got not just tungsten, but copper, silver, and zinc, and obviously in appreciable quantities. So it's a really, really good system. And just as a reminder, this is one of four known at surface mineralized tungsten, copper, silver, zinc skarns. We have Good Hope, Garnet, and gunmetal as well. So this is just one of those four zones. So really, there's a lot of scale here. And we really believe that all four of those zones are connected. And a lot of the work we're doing suggests that that is the case. So this is the biggest one right now, and it's accessible. But there's a much bigger picture here, and we're going to continue to unveil that as we progress this property over the next couple months and years.
And in meters, how far apart are the different ones that you're talking about? Obviously, Pilot Mountain is the center, and
hmm
where we're going to have a resource base. But how
hmm
far apart are the other ones in meters or kilometers?
Yeah, so Good Hope is about a kilometer and a half to the north, and then Gunmetal and Garnet are up in the foothills of the mountains, another kilometer and a half away. So, between the four of them, we have a really big footprint here. So, like I said, there's scale here, and we're just scratching the surface here with these results, with a lot more to come.
And what do you think when you say they're connected? Do you think there's like stockwork between them, and then there's been four different sort of eruptions, if you like, or four skarns, if you like, that have come up, but in between all of that, there will be stockwork?
Yeah, so I mean, the way these systems typically work is you have a porphyry that's in place, right? Your porphyry is your mineralized, sort of intrusive body. It's magmatic, and then as it gets closer to the surface, the pressure is released, and that's when your mineralized fluids they pop off and they move upwards through the crust. And in the case of skarns, a skarn forms when these hot mineralized fluids intersect a limestone unit or a reactive carbonate. So what's happening is we have some sort of porphyry at depth. I mean, we've already identified one of the porphyries, but these fluids come up, and anywhere they can go, if there's faults or there's other kind of ways for them to migrate up, anywhere they find limestone, they can react and they can form these great deposits. So it's probably one central porphyry, or there's clustered porphyries, and there's a bigger, as these fluids are rising up, they're finding all these different limestone units that exist and then creating these deposits. So it's one kind of big mineralizing system here, and Desert Shed is just a part of it.
And sorry for asking you so many geological questions,
No, it's
but
okay, of course.
the porphyry then has to be, or does it have to be very rich metallically, or is it sent all its metal up?
Yeah, so I mean it is a good question. Typically, you find that the porphyries will retain some of their mineralized content, just to put it simply. So like I said, as the pressure is released, certain fluids release off, but then others remain in the porphyry, and that's when it crystallizes. So you typically, if you have mineralized skarns, you're going to have mineralized porphyry as well. And we know that with Porphyry South. We drilled almost 400 meters of moly-rich porphyry rock. And now, as Phil mentioned in this release, we've now hit copper enrichment within the porphyry as well. So typically what you find is within your porphyry, you're going to find similar signatures to that of your skarn. So if we have tungsten, copper, silver, zinc in the skarn, oftentimes you're going to find at least one or two of those metals in the what's called a causative porphyry. So the porphyry that sort of caused all this or was the focal point, you're going to find sort of similar enrichment within those two bodies.
So what we're looking at is a big body underneath, which is the porphyry, and then potentially four like legs, if you like,
Sure. Yeah.
if it's a upturned stool or an upturned chair, that we've got the porphyry down there, and then four legs, which at the minute we're looking at Pilot Mountain, drilling Pilot Mountain,
Yeah.
sorry, Desert Shielite within
Yeah.
Pilot Mountain, and then there'll be three others that you will also go and have a look at.
Yeah, and
So
potentially zones in between as well. I mean, it's a big property. There's a lot of mineralization at surface. So, we're focused on the task at hand, which is, getting Desert Shielite as close to production ready as and quickly as we can. But there's a big story here. So we'll continue to scratch the, kind of unveil that picture as we progress. But yeah, I think you kind of put it correctly there, which is it's a big system and there's a lot more to be discovered here.
So being in Nevada, weather's not an issue. You're going to be drilling throughout. I presume because it's America, you're going to have a Christmas break, holiday season, probably
Yep.
holiday January, and then start again in January. And you're continuing to drill on Desert Shielite
Yep.
and continuing to go. So it's not going to stop at hole 38.
No, no, no. We're still going. Like you mentioned, there's a holiday break for sure. The drillers and our guys need a rest, as do the rest of us. But we'll be back on site in January as early as we can and going again. I mean, we put out a photo yesterday, I think it was, of the drilling. There's not a snowflake on the ground. I think it's still about 10, 12, 13 degrees Celsius. So that's why we love Nevada. And even if it does snow, it's road accessible. We can get there, bit of snow plowing, and off we go. So we're gonna obviously take a holiday break here at some stage and then back at it in January and off we go again. So 2025 is going to be the busiest year yet for Guardian Metal.
And your second new exciting project that you've got the option agreement on, are we expecting some results from that shortly? And will that be concluded this side of Christmas, or is it going to take a bit longer? I suppose it's an impossible question to answer, so you're not going to answer it, but we'll ask anyway.
I'll dance around it. The DD period ends, I believe it's January 23rd. That's the deadline. So we are progressing really well with that. We don't want to go that full distance. Obviously, we put it in there just in case. We've completed most of our required DD steps, so we will have an update out shortly. I'll just say that to get myself out of trouble. But shortly, we will have an update with some of the results from the DD sampling campaign, some of the other work that we've been doing to understand this project. But, the scale here is important to remember. Obviously, it's subject to the DD being satisfactory and us entering into the option. But, it's historic resource. I need to say it's historic of 31,000 tons of WO3 at 0.43%. So it's not that much smaller than Pilot Mountain from a historic perspective. And obviously being patented ground, having the historic infrastructure in place, it's a really significant asset. And if we do sign the definitive, I think it's potentially game changing here as we scale this business up from one fantastic asset to multiple assets in Nevada as we look to really grab the tungsten mantle in the US, so to say.
I think you've timed that one to what feels like perfection. The acquisition in terms of the news that we saw. We've seen China obviously tightening their export controls on the critical materials. We've seen gallium, is it germanium, obviously rare earths, and then antimony as well. And then obviously we saw the announcement, I think it was from Nikkei Asia on the 16th of November, where basically they said that sister company of Financial Times, Nikkei, said that China plans to tighten export controls on key dual-use technologies and items in 2 weeks, including the raw materials and metals such as tungsten, graphite, magnesium. So just talk us through how what sort of impact this potentially has on Guardian going forward as China sort of tightens these restrictions.
Yeah, I mean it's funny, Phil. We've been talking about the potential for export restrictions out of China for months and months now, really since the antimony export ban. And people were kind of looking at me like I was crazy, and I kept on saying, "Well, no. I mean, people in the industry are saying that tungsten is next for all the reasons the data points that we've discussed. China controls 86%. The US has no domestic production. It's a key defense metal. I mean, all the data points pointing to what is happening now. So I don't want to be too, smug about it, but it's obviously good to have sort of something that we have signaled is likely to happen. The extent of the restrictions are still sort of, we don't know the full details yet. So we'll be watching the kind of the news closely over the next few weeks here to see how this all unfolds. But I think just the reality is, and really the takeaway, regardless of what the export restrictions end up being, is the US needs a domestic source. Having a domestic source of tungsten solves this. And with the tariff regime that's in place right now, I mean, even 25% tariff, the downstream guys in the US they're struggling because they're having to pay, spot plus 25% for their tungsten imports from China. Right, that becomes really challenging, and if tariffs go up even further, which there's speculation that they may do, a 60% tariff makes it uneconomic to import from China, and that's really the point of tariffs, because then they need to look at the U.S. and go, can we do this in the U.S.? Right, that because if you can mine it in the U.S., there's no tariffs. So really, these tariffs support us tremendously. It makes our project and our product that much more competitive in the global landscape, especially for downstream guys in the US. So it sounds cliched, but it's the right metal at the right time at the right place. And I hate to say that, but it's just so true. And so, I think it perfectly illustrates what we're doing here and why we're so excited.
Yeah, I don't think you hate to say it at all, Oliver, let's be honest. You're very happy to say it.
Well, in this case, I'm happy, yes.
So, Oliver, what you're saying is on I just want to take you back to the option agreement that you've got. That old resource was developed on straight holes.
So no, it's not entirely on straight holes, Kev. I mean, there's been multiple years of drilling. Like I said, a lot of these sections within the resource the resource is built off of the vertical hole that was drilled. So what we're doing is we're stepping back and drilling angled holes to give us a better sense as to what the width of this mineralized body is, and to see, 46 meters of mineralization in hole 17 signals that the zone is wider than obviously a vertical hole can tell us.
So the dual use that you were talking about in the RNS, just give us a bit more detail on that in terms of the dual use of tungsten in terms of all the different things that it can be used for.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a kind of a unique but important designation, and it came up in the restriction announcement from China was dual use. They're looking at dual use metals, with tungsten being considered dual use. The reason it is dual use is because it's used, number one, in the military. That's one of the uses, and the second one is in multiple industrial applications. So we've talked about all the different ways that tungsten is used, but it has civilian and defense military applications, which tungsten acutely has both those use cases, and that's why it's such an important metal. It's because it supports industry and it supports defense, and there's not many metals that have that same dual use that tungsten does.
And in this crazy world, it's obviously the defense side of things that they want to prevent. Let's be honest.
Well, I
And
mean,
the
yeah, of
US
course.
and the US needs it as well. The reality is they've left themselves sort of short in a big way.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the defense is really pushing the narrative right now. The much more tungsten is consumed in various sort of civilian industrial applications. But the fact that US has no domestic supply, they're reliant on China, and they need it for, ammunitions, tank armors. There's a long list of important defense applications that need tungsten. So all signs point to the need for a domestic source. And Guardian positioned ourselves for this, 3.5 years ago. And we're now just really getting into stride here. We're drilling some fantastic holes. This is going to support the PFS, the updated mine plan. So the timing is great, and we're really, really obviously excited about this. And Tempai Ute can really add a lot of firepower to what we're doing as well. So looking forward to tying up that DD and continuing to push this narrative forward at a time when the U.S. needs domestic production, period.
Yeah, indeed. I think you're right place, right time. And it hasn't just happened overnight, as you said.
No,
So, yeah,
no, no, no.
good luck. And we look forward to speaking to you again over the next few weeks as more and more information comes out. Obviously, both on Desert Sheelite in terms of all of these holes and the option agreement. As you notice, I keep calling it the option agreement because I don't want to pronounce it incorrectly. But yeah, I mean, I think there's lots and lots to go on. We could talk about the potential positives of all of those things. We've got the garnet, we've got the silver, we've got copper, which is all going to add up to quite a great equivalent metal in situ valuation. And yeah, we look forward to all of that as we go forward.
Well, thanks for the time, gents. Let's chat again before the holidays. There's going to be a lot of news over the next couple of weeks here. So, yeah, exciting times ahead.
Oliver Friesen, CEO of Guardian Metal Resources, thanks very much for appearing on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, gents.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.